Welcome back, everybody, to Silverstone, or welcome along if you didn't join us for the sprint race earlier on. But we've got our second of 4 races for the GT Cup Championship coming up for you in just a few moments' time. This is the first of our pit stop races of the weekend. So whilst the cars are beginning to assemble on the grid, let's introduce you to not just a new set of drivers that are joining us this weekend, but also a new team. Team Trofeo Racing are out for the first time ever, with father and son pairing James and Bill Cayley in their Porsche. We caught up with them yesterday for a quick chat. James, Bill, some new entrants for GT Cup this weekend in your Team Trofeo Porsche. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, we're really looking forward to it. It's just going to be a sort of like a little trial run for us, sort of dip a toe in the water, so to speak, to maybe look to do a season next year. So we're still racing Porsche Club at the moment. We've got a free weekend where we've got another month before we have our next race, so we thought we'd come to Silverstone and see how we get on.
Bill, I know you've been racing alongside Dad for a good number of years. You get the opportunity to share the car this weekend.
Yeah, no, looking forward to that. I think probably Mum prefers that because we're not both out on track at the same time, so the issue of hitting each other won't come up. But no, it's going to be interesting. We've sort of been going, well, this is our third day sort of in the car. We've sort of been around the same pace, so don't think we can really blame each other too much, or one's not far behind the other. So no, really looking forward to it.
It's a new challenge, GT Cup, but it's also a new challenge because it's a brand new car that you've not raced before, James.
Yeah, definitely. It almost feels like starting racing again. So it's sort of a step up for us, and speed-wise, and so yeah, a lot to learn about the car. We've never had any aero, on our old cars, so we're learning that. And so, but love learning new stuff. Still lots to go, but yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
First weekend in GT Cup, Bill. What are you looking to achieve? Well,
I mean, sort of, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't want to be on the podium. Probably car in one piece at the end of the weekend is always a good thing. Just to be fair, I think just looking forward to it really. Sort of just getting out there, seeing where we are with the pace, and if we're up there with the other guys in the Lamborghinis and the BMWs, we'll be happy with that, I think.
And final question, James. You said it's just a one-off for the 2024 season, but possibilities for 2025 with GT Cup?
Yeah, possibly, definitely. I mean, we want to see come enjoy the weekend, hopefully. Run the car, hope the car goes well, hope we go well. That's more the thing, I think, is getting ourselves used to the car. And so, yeah, with a view to doing a season next year would be good fun.
Well, it's great to see Team Trofeo on the grid. Great to see you guys on the grid. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
So yeah, really good to see that Trofeo Racing Porsche with its fantastic livery that really does harks back to the works Porsches, doesn't it? The Group C era and even things like the 959 as well, the rally car. So really good to see it out there. So the cars are all fully assembled on the grid. This grid is based on the fastest lap times that were set in the sprint race earlier on today. Sprint race that was secured by the car that sits there on pole position. Richard Neary was driving at the time, but it is going to be Ian Loggy, his teammate, that will start this one. So as the cars head on their formation lap, we'll guide you through the grid, the starting drivers, and pick up on how long each car in theory will remain stationary in the pit lane area. So off they go onto their final formation lap in advance of this 50-minute pit stop race. We'll remember have a 50-minute pit stop race as our third race of the weekend tomorrow morning, followed by a sprint race to round off the weekend. So let's guide you through the grid then. It is the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes of Ian Loggy that starts from pole position, 75 seconds in the pit lane for that car, and alongside is the number 97 Beach Team Aston Martin, Andrew Howard, 105 seconds as their new entrance. Row 2 of the grid, Steve Burgess with the Radical, 80 seconds, and for company, the car started by Warren Gilbert, 80 seconds as well. Row 3 of the grid on the inside, Charlotte Gilbert will start, the second of the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghinis, 95 seconds in the pit lane, alongside is Paul Bailey in the Lamborghini, 100 seconds because he's got the pro driver, David Brabham, that he shares with. Row 4 of the grid, Seamus Jennings starts, 60 seconds for GCAT Racing is all they have to spend in the pit lane, and new entrant Kev Clark in his Lamborghini, 67 seconds on the outside of row number 4. Row 5 of the grid, James Cayley, who we've just spoken to, will start, 67 seconds before he hands over to his son Bill, and alongside it's the first of the cars in Group GTH, Sam Nesser making his debut in GT Cup, 95 seconds when he gives way to Will Orton. The 6th row of the grid, Matthew Higgins lines up on the 6th row of the grid, and there'll be 100 seconds when they give way to each other. Alongside is going to be number 86, which is Leona Theobald, will start, 90 seconds when Owen Hizzy takes over. Row 7 of the grid, Michael Arant, 100 seconds in the pit lane, and alongside Chris Murphy, who goes solo, just 60 seconds for the Woodrow Motorsport BMW. Row 8 of the grid, Doc Bush, Team Parker Racing, the Porsche, 60 seconds, alongside Jazz Sapra in the Woodrow Motorsport BMW, 67 seconds for him because he's another new entrant for this weekend. Row 9 of the grid, Rupert Williams starts for Jolt Racing in the McLaren, 100 seconds, and alongside is Andre Borodin, 105 seconds when he gives way to the pro driver Ed Peed. And the back of the grid, hopefully he's there after troubles earlier on, it is Richard Chamberlain in the ever likeable orange CTR Developments Porsche 935, 60 seconds for Richard. He's another driver that goes solo. So that is the way that the grid lines up for those cars that are in Group 1. So in other words, if you're a car in Group GTO, Group GT3 or Group GTC, they pit between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. In other words, when the countdown timer comes up at the top, when there's between 26 and 21 of the race still remaining. And for those in Group 2, so if you're running Group GTB, Group GTH, Group GTA, then you pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race. And in other words, when there are between 21 and 15 minutes to go. So those are the respective pit windows. I've given you the amount of time that they all have to remain stationary, and therefore we can look forward to this first pit stop race of the weekend. I didn't see the orange Porsche of Richard Chamberlain at the tail end of the field, which does suggest the problems that have befallen him mean that he's not able to take part in this pit stop race today. I could see Andre Borodin's car, I think, was there at the tail end, but I didn't see the Porsche. In fact, is Andre Borodin's car there? No, I'm not sure that is either by the look of things. The Jolt Racing car is there, but I can't see number 24 Andre Borodin. I can't see number 5 Richard Chamberlain. So, on the front row of the grid, the Mercedes of Ian Loggy alongside Andrew Howard's Beach Dean AMR Aston Martin. It's a Group GTO Mercedes alongside a Group GT3 Aston Martin. Steve Burgess on the second row of the grid is keen to get on with things at the wheel of the Tim Gray Motorsport car. And he's got Warren Gilbert, who is the leading car in Group GTC for company, that sits alongside him on the second row of the grid. Lights are on the gantry, lights flash their way out and they charge their way up towards Copse Corner for the first time. Are we going to have the Mercedes in the lead, or might the Aston Martin sweep around the outside? Well, Andrew Howard is trying to, but I think Ian Logie is just going to keep his nose ahead as they head out of Copse Corner and up towards Maggots and then Beckett's for the first time. And in fact, Andrew Howard has lost out to Steve Burgess, who at the wheel of the Radical RXC has snuck his way through. Steve was going well earlier before the car had a puncture, and that cost him retirement whilst he was running in second position. He really has had some pretty rotten luck so far this year. We also need to keep an eye on what's going on for the lead of Group GTH in the early stages. That looks as though the two Forsetti Motorsport Aston Martins are squabbling away, and the Ginetta of Leona Theobald plus then Michael Arant at the wheel of the McLaren aren't that far away. So 4 cars as one up towards Stowe Corner. Chris Murphy's BMW trying to get in on the fun as well with the Group GTH cars, but it's Aston Martin from McLaren, then the interloping BMW before we then see Leona Theobald's Ginetta. And all 4 of those cars, if you exclude the BMW, are all fighting away for the first 4 places in Group GTH. Everybody, I think, has managed to stay within the confines of the circuit. Not seen anybody make contact with anybody on the first lap of this one. Sprint race earlier on saw some contact at the first corner that was deemed that neither driver was at fault. And for this one, it's all gone clean so far as they head through the fast section at Abbey and up towards Farm. The battle in Group GTH is always a close one. Season after season after season, I think it proves to be the most competitive class, Group GTH. All of the cars run to GT4 homologation. There's a balance of performance which equalises the performance over whether it be front-engined Aston Martins, whether it be rear-engined McLarens, whether it be front-engined Ginettas, whether they be forced induction, whether they be normally aspirated. And there, by the look of things, there was potential change for position, was there? Yeah, that was Warren Gilbert, who is trying to get picked off by Seamus Jennings. He's got Top Cats Racing Lamborghini ahead of him. He's got a Top Cats Racing Lamborghini behind him. It's Warren Gilbert just ahead of wife Charlotte Gilbert. And in a straight line, the Super Trofeo spec Lamborghini is more than a match for the Group GT3 Porsche. Up towards Copse Corner. This is going to be for 4th, 5th, 6th, and if we include Paul Bailey's car, the Lamborghini at the back of the order, 7th place. And then not far off them is going to be the car of James Cayley as well, who is at the moment running 3rd in Group GTC, and is not that far off the pace of the 2 Top Cats Lamborghinis ahead of him that are 1st and 2nd respectively in Group GTC for the Cup Spec cars. So speeds build again as they thread their way out of Chapel and onto the Hangar Straight. Warren Gilbert 4th, Seamus Jennings 5th, but under attack from Charlotte Gilbert, who thought about having a look up the inside. Nose dips on the Porsche, which tells you that Seamus Jennings, the Irishman, is onto the brakes as he turns his way through Stowe. Still managing to keep Charlotte Gilbert at bay. Charlotte Gilbert has got the black and Dayglow Lamborghini of Paul Bailey behind. Then it's James Cayley. Then it's the lead battle for Group GTH between the 2 Forsetti teammates. And by the look of things, Sam Nesser is trying to go all the way around the outside of Matthew Higgins. Needs to be careful that he doesn't get pushed wide, and that also offers up an opportunity for Michael Arant to see whether he can squeeze his way through. Andre Borodin's car is there, didn't see it at the start, but he's definitely there because I can see his McLaren 720 GT3 in the background of the shot as well. That's the blue car with the yellow flashes to it. So GTH descend upon Village. Andre Borodin trying to thread his way through the order at the wheel of his GT3 McLaren. But 1st, 2nd and 3rd in Group GTH all together at this stage. Chris Murphy clinging on to the back of them at the wheel of his fantastically sounding BMW M3 E46. And there's a change. That is going to be Paul Bailey through and up and ahead of Warren Gilbert now, who's lost a few places on that lap. Oh, big wiggle from Michael Arant as the tail end of the Artura just didn't comply with the driver's input. He's going to lose a place to Chris Murphy, who goes through. He'll lose out to Andre Borodin's far more powerful and far more aero-developed GT3 car. So the McLaren goes through as well, the 720S ahead of the Artura. And that also drops Michael Arant a little bit into the clutches of Leona Theobald's Ginetta as well. So Seamus Jennings 3rd, Charlotte Gilbert 4th, Paul Bailey 5th at the wheel of the black Lamborghini, Warren Gilbert 6th at the moment. So Charlotte Gilbert in the first of those Lamborghinis, one with the pink wing mirrors, now also picks up the lead of Group GTC from her husband, Warren Gilbert. Now, Charlotte Gilbert's car is in a stronger position in the championship, so perhaps make you wonder whether the teams have just ensured that she remains in the stronger position. How long will Charlotte stop for? 95 seconds when she gives way to Tom Rawlings. Warren Gilbert will stop for 80 when he gives way to Fraser Fenwick, who put in a great performance and recovery drive in the sprint race earlier on, if you didn't watch it. He was tagged into a spin at the first corner and fought his way all the way back through to finish 4th overall and 2nd in Group GTC. Brilliant recovery drive from him. So the lead battle of Group GTH is now under the cosh from Andre Borodin, who works his way through and past Matthew Higgins in the car that lies 3rd in the championship standings but leads Group GTH championship standings, so 3rd overall when we look at all the groups together, but on its own in Group GTH it is the championship leading car in that category. Running 2nd on the road to its sister car from Forseti Motorsport, who are based on the doorstep of Snetterton, which is where we'll conclude the 2024 GT Cup Championship season. After here at Silverstone, we've got another visit to go to at Donington Park. We started the season there on the national circuit, but we'll go to the Grand Prix circuit in the middle of September, and then early part of October it's on to Norfolk and Snetterton for the final 4 races of the season. So for Andre Borodin, we got as far as the first corner before the contact in race number 1, limped the car back to the pits. There wasn't a great deal of damage to it. There's a bit to the front, and some of the bodywork shed itself from there, but he's now looking to see if he can thread his way through and past the number 10 Aston Martin in a straight line. He does so. Sam Nasser will let him go, and probably didn't have a great deal of choice anyway because of the straight line speed of the McLaren. Leading Group GTA still at the moment is Rupert Williams, who we didn't see out at Alton Park. Rupert was away getting married in Las Vegas, so congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Williams. Good to see Jolt Racing back, good to see Rupert back, who's hugely enthusiastic. Partnered up with John Ingram again for this weekend. They'll stop in the pit lane in the Group GTA McLaren for 100 seconds. As a bare minimum period, the car should be stationary. And where are they running at the moment? They are running in 16th position. New team to the championship for this year. Plenty of guests here for Jolt Racing this weekend as well. And hopefully we'll see them for every other round that remains in the 2024 championship season. And I think plans are already afoot as to what 2025 might look like for Jolt Racing. I haven't seen much of Ian Logie, our race leader, largely because he is pushing hard. He's not that much up the road, though, from Steve Burgess, so he's just set the fastest lap of the race, Ian Logie, on the previous lap, 1 minute 59.930. I think he may well go even quicker than that this time through as he flashes his way through now to complete lap number 4. No, he's a whisker slower, and I say a whisker slower. He is 90 thousandths of a second slower. Steve Burgess is still within 2 3/4 seconds of him in second place at the wheel of the Radical. So Group GTA Mercedes leads, Group GTO Radical in second place, so Group GTO from Group GTO. Group GT3 car of Andrew Howard, double former British GT champion in the Beechdene Aston Martin, is next up. Paul Bailey is still trying to attack Warren Gilbert to see whether there's any way he can get his GTO Lamborghini through and ahead of the GTC car. So Warren Gilbert's car runs to Super Trofeo specification. Paul Bailey's is a GT3 car that runs in the open category, so they may well have either decided to keep it still GT3 compliant but running GTO to ensure they secure points in that, or it may well be they've removed restrictors from the car to give it more power, more straight line speed. But at the moment it's the Group GTC Lamborghini of Warren Gilbert that still hangs on to 6th position and actually got himself ahead of Paul Bailey on that lap. Paul Bailey was trying to attack back when we first picked up on it, so Warren Gilbert up to 6th, Paul Bailey down to 7th in the car that he was hoping would be on show with a customer this weekend. He was hoping to have raced the Brabham BT62, but problems for that in qualifying yesterday curtailed the Brabham's involvement for the weekend, and a deal had to be struck to bring the Lamborghini to the circuit when it should have been on display somewhere, and instead the broken Brabham, I think, has now replaced the Lamborghini at whatever show it was going to. And I also mentioned earlier on, whilst Paul is the champion, and it would usually say number 1 on the car, because he's had such rotten luck since he put number 1 on the side of the car at the beginning of the season, he's gone back to his regular number for this weekend, 28. So up towards the kink at Abbey, on towards Farm. Warren Gilbert, having taken 6th place away from Paul Bailey, is not really pulling away. Behind these two is going to be James Cayley still at the wheel of the number 80 Porsche. Then after that, it'll be Andre Borodin, who is still starting to make some good progress at the wheel of the GT3 McLaren 720S, run by Greystone GT. So there goes the McLaren now. Andrew Howard at the wheel of the Beech Dean Aston Martin will be handing the car over to factory Aston Martin driver for what, the best part of nearly 2 decades now, Darren Turner. So Andrew Howard, who's done huge amounts of racing, largely in Aston Martins, not just in the UK, in GT racing in the UK, but also we did see a good chunk of Beech Dean AMR in Europe a few seasons ago. But as ever, Andrew's a busy businessman running the family business, and therefore over the course of the last few seasons has really just concentrated on domestic motorsport again once more. Absolutely loyal to the Aston Martin brand, and always fantastic to see one of the Beech Dean cars out. So it's the 3rd time ever we've had Beech Dean join us in GT Cup. Previously they've always been in the GTH category for GT4 cars. I think their debut was it 2015 at Brands Hatch, when Andrew Howard was partnered up with Paul Hollywood, and then they returned at Donington Park a couple of seasons later with Andrew Howard again partnered up with TV cook Paul Hollywood from the Great British Bake Off, and this is the 3rd time that they've been out, this time with Le Mans winner Darren Turner alongside. Right, Warren Gilbert still working hard to try and put a daylight between himself and Paul Bailey, having snuck his way through and past him. Paul Bailey now also coming under pressure from Andre Borodin. And Andre, is he going to try anything there? No, it's a bit too quick going in towards Abbey to try anything. Andre's a busy man, not just racing motor cars, but also heavily involved in polo as well. Comes from a financial background and has done a chunk of racing in GT Cup over the years. Has done sporadic races in British GT this last season. I think he was out at Spa. But good to see him back in the GT Cup ranks for the first time in probably best part of 9 months, 12 months. And also the return of Greystone GT as well, but he's not yet fully caught Paul Bailey. So this is going to be Paul Bailey 7th, Andre Borodin 8th. Group GTO car under pressure from Group GT3 car. So Paul Bailey is 3rd in Group GTO, Andre Borodin is 3rd in Group GT3. 37 minutes to go, so we're still a chunk away from the pit window opening. Best part still of just over 10 minutes before the first of the pit windows opens, and for today the first of the pit windows is for the cars that are classified in Group 1, you could say. So that's all the cars towards the sharp end of the order, so anything that runs in Group GTO, Group GT3 or Group GTC. So in other words, that means the top 9 cars in this race at the moment would all pit when the first pit window opens, and those sort of 10th backwards are largely going to pit when the second window opens. And here is Charlotte Gilbert trying to attack Seamus Jennings. The GCAT Racing Porsche is far enough ahead of the Top Cats Lamborghini when they head through Stowe Corner, so the Porsche hangs on to it. Charlotte Gilbert at the wheel of the championship leading car overall. Herself and Tom Rawlings have done cracking work so far this season in not just Group GTC, but overall performances in the race, including that overall win, wasn't it, for Tom Rawlings at Brands Hatch at round 5 of the championship. And now she's again having another little move around to try and distract Seamus Jennings. Numerous group wins so far this season for them. So that overall win, they've also had overall seconds, thirds and fourths, plenty of those. And here is Charlotte Gilbert running in 5th at the moment, trying to net another 4th place overall if she can, but is still hugely conscious that, you know, overtaking his Porsche at this stage of the race won't net any extra championship points. It would still keep her in the lead of Group GTC, and therefore it's the lead of your group. That's what gives you the points. But she'll want to crack on as well, because she also knows that other cars in her group will be stopping for shorter periods of time. So this number 2 Lamborghini in the pit lane for 95 seconds. Her husband, Warren Gilbert, when he gives way to Fraser Fenwick, they will stop for 15 seconds less. They'll stop for 80 seconds. And then the Cayley family, James and Bill Cayley, they'll stop for what I think will just be 67 seconds because they're new entrants for this weekend. And has Charlotte managed to do it this time up towards Copse Corner? You could see a nose dive on the Lamborghini. You could see the tail end just wiggle round on the brakes, but brilliantly done by Charlotte Gilbert. Through and past Seamus Jennings, up to 4th overall. Still continues to lead Group GTC, and now we'll look to try and pull away from the Porsche. Top Cats Racing, who've been a fundamental part of GT Cup as a team for a huge amount of years, whether it be running the old Marcos Mantis cars, for which Charlotte used to drive and did take a win in what were difficult conditions when she made the right call on tyres at Snetterton and others didn't. They also then ran the Lamborghini Gallardo for a period of time before switching to these Huracans. And the Huracan swap has proved very, very successful indeed. So there's the Team Trofeo pit lane. Bill Cayley just looking over his shoulder. They'll be fully focused on what Bill Cayley is doing. What James Cayley is doing, father of Bill, who'll take over the car. And at the moment, so far this weekend, they have driven superbly. They might know the circuit because they'll have raced their Porsche Club GP cars here in the past, the 997 or the Cayman. 997 for James Cayley, the Cayman for Bill. But they've not really raced this Cup spec car before. It's a Pirelli tyre, which they will have raced on, but it will be a different compound of Pirelli tyres. They've got that to get used to. And of course, it's a different team and a different championship dynamic to understand as well. But it's always good to see new entrants coming into the championship, and they ideally wanted to be competitive. It would appear they are. They wanted to keep the car in one piece. It is. And if they could, finish on the podium, or they're 3rd in Group GTC at the moment, which would net them some silverware. And they may well gain a further place or two come the pit stops. There goes Chris Murphy through shot. Now, I think that means, does that mean that Chris Murphy has got himself through and ahead of Matthew Higgins on that lap? Yeah, I think it does it not? So, yeah, it is. So through and ahead goes Chris Murphy. So that now means he's up to 11th place at the wheel of the Woodrow Motorsport BMW. Chris, who we caught up with earlier on this weekend, and says he just races for fun and always has a smile on his face when it's gone well. Understandably on a difficult day less so, but just wants to roll his sleeves up and get stuck in. He's always a fair racer as well. Very seldom you see Chris Carl come back with any scrapes or scratches on it. And that's another place picked up from him then. So up to 11th place he goes, through and ahead of Matthew Higgins in the number 9 Fossetti Motorsport Aston Martin. That's the black car with the green flashes to it. The car that's ahead now of Chris Murphy is going to be the sister car to it, Sam Nessa's car, which is the number 10 Fossetti Aston Martin. That's the black car but's got the blue flashes to it. That's the way you can tell the two apart. Now, last time through, race leader Ian Loggy doesn't need to push because he leads by 14 seconds. New fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 59.257 from Ian Loggy. So he is working hard. Here we might have another change for position. This is Andre Borodin trying to get up the inside of Warren Gilbert. So Warren's hanging on to the final place inside the top 6 at the moment. Andre Borodin is pushing hard, and in the pit lane ready to jump on board the Beechdean Aston Martin is factory driver and GT Cup returnee, which is Darren Turner. We've seen a chunk of Darren Turner racing in GT Cup in the past, largely with James Guess over the last few seasons in a GT4 Aston Martin. And Base Performance Simulators, which was owned for a very long period of time by Darren Turner. He still has some financial interest in the company, but has largely sold to James Guest now, who has taken over what has been a very, very successful business. And there's still an ongoing relationship also between James Guest now and Darren Turner in terms of other businesses as well. So good to see Darren out behind the wheel of the car. Or he will be very shortly, because what have we got, about 4.5 minutes before the pit window opens. Now Andre Borodin Hasn't as yet managed to get himself from inside the top 6. He's still not close enough to Warren Gilbert this time as they head up towards Maggots and Beckett. Warren Gilbert in 6th place is not that far behind the 5th place car of Seamus Jennings, who will shortly give way to Greg Caton. But I think they will all split themselves up come the pit window. They'll all be pitting during the same period of time, so between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race, i.e. 26 to 21 minutes remaining. But for the Porsche, that'll be stationary for 60 seconds because it's 2 sporting drivers or 2 AM drivers together, Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton. For Warren Gilbert giving way to Fraser Fenwick, that's 2 sporting drivers together, but they've got some success seconds from the previous race and therefore stopped for an extra 20 as he squeezed his way through and ahead there, Warren Gilbert, decisively over Seamus Jennings, who saw him coming and gave him racing room. Otherwise there would have been a clatter between the pair of them. And then Andre Borodin also now wants to get in on the mix as well, having come from the tail end of the field. He's partnered up with a pro driver, Ed Peed, so they'll stop for 85 seconds, plus some success seconds they accumulated earlier on in the season, according to the bulletin that was presented to me. So 105 seconds they will stop for in total. So 1 minute and 45 that will be. Leading Group GTH is the sister car to this one. Sam Nessa leads the group. This is second in Group GTH, Matthew Higgins. He'll give way to Mikey Porter. They're about to be lapped by the race leader Ian Loggy as he comes over the start-finish line. Ian Loggy can't pit as yet because the pit window does not open until the clock at the top shows there are 26 minutes remaining, is my understanding of the regulations. And it means that you can't break the beam at pit lane entry until that. You could be at a pit lane approach road, but you can't break the beam before you get to the 24th minute of the race. So in other words, when there's 26 remaining. Through and over the start-finish line. Warren Gilbert, there's John Ingram. He's ready to go for Jolt Racing. John, who's back to racing after a very, very long sabbatical, concentrating on family and business. Crash helmet will be going on. Not just yet, because of course the car that he is sharing with Rupert Williams runs in Group GTA, so their pit window isn't going to open for another 7 minutes yet. And there's a mistake. Warren Gilbert makes a mistake heading round through Maggots and Beckett and manages to scoop up the mistake. But having just gained a place and put himself back up into 5th place, through has gone Seamus Jennings once more, and also taking the opportunity to go through is the McLaren in the hands of Andre Borodin, the number 24 car. So Warren Gilbert, all of the hard work, wasn't much of a mistake, it's only a slight mistake, wasn't it? But by the time he'd run off the circuit onto the run-off tarmac, gathered up the moment, no doubt got a bit of dust and pick up on his tyres as well that he needs to clean up for the next few corners, and that's 2 places lost, I'm afraid. But thankfully, the cars that went through, both running Group GT3, the Porsche and the McLaren, means that Warren Gilbert, despite losing 2 places overall, is still second in Group GTC at this stage. And has Andre Borodin got an overlap on the GCAT Racing Porsche? No, still cannot as yet find a way through. Up towards the braking area for Village. Andre Borodin, a very late turn in there, almost across the nose of Warren Gilbert. Then a slightly run wide, didn't really grab the apex enough heading through the loop, but he's still done enough to keep himself ahead of the car that's behind him. This is Leona Theobald being harried around by Doc Bush, the former motorcycle racer. So this is going to be for 13th and 14th places overall. Leona Theobald in the Ginetta is currently 3rd in Group GTH at this stage. So heading towards a potential podium. Doc Bush is 5th in Group GTC, and then there's a little bit of contact there. Andre Borodin and Seamus Jennings make a bit of contact. So that's bits of bodywork flying off, I think, the left rear corner of the McLaren. I think the Porsche largely got away with that, but yeah, it's definitely some bodywork missing from the McLaren, and that is surely going to affect the aero of the car. Doesn't seem to have caused any issues with tyres or punctures with that little bit of contact between the pair of them. But yeah, you look, after the rear wheel arch, there's not a great deal more bodywork on that left-hand side of the car, of the McLaren, whereas on the right-hand side you can see the bodywork extends all the way to the back of the wheel. So up towards Stowe Corner, Andre Borodin, Warren Gilbert and then Seamus Jennings at the tail end of this little trio now, who've been fairly equally matched, haven't they, throughout the course of the stint. So here comes Borodin. look at this side, look, you can see the blue and then the yellow right at the back, look. And as the car then comes the opposite way, and you see the opposite side, oh, you couldn't quite catch it there, but you'll see there's a lot less bodywork behind the rear wheel on that left-hand side than there is on the right-hand side. So that was what went missing with that little bit of contact. Here we go, might get a better shot from this here. There you go, there's all the bodywork that's now missing off that corner there. Now, the pit window, I believe, will be open, and indeed it is. So into the pit lane has come Andrew Howard. He's out of the car already. Darren Turner being belted in. In goes the communication system. On go the seat belts. The window netting will need to come across. And then, not that Andrew Howard is a slow driver. He is a double former champion in British GT, but Darren Turner has been a professional racing driver for many a year. He's done less racing this year, but he did say he's probably done more work in terms of other developments with Aston Martin than he's ever done before. And he's one of the older factory drivers now, really, is Darren Turner. Johnny Adam, you could argue, is also sort of getting slightly long in the tooth as a driver, but is still as competitive as ever, and is still, younger than me, very young indeed. But you've got the newer ones coming through, like the Ross Guns, and other younger factory drivers coming in, maybe Tom Canning and people like that. The next generation of works drivers for Aston Martin, and Pro Driver, of course, who have been long time supporters and partnerships with Aston Martin. So a few more cars coming into the pit lane. We saw Andrew Howard was in to give way to Darren Turner. Charlotte Gilbert has come in to give way to Tom Rawlings. So the number 2 Lamborghini is in. Paul Bailey is in at the wheel of number 28 Lamborghini to give way to ex-Formula 1 driver and Le Mans winner as well, David Brabham. Chris Murphy heads for the pit lane as well at the wheel of his Group GTC BMW, and also the race leader is in as well. Richard Neary to give way to Ian Logie. Doesn't show on my timing screen that car is in the pit lane, but it's definitely there. There it is in the background. And also Steve Burgess is in at the wheel of the car that we haven't seen a great deal of, but has been running beautifully well, the Radical RXC, in second place. And for Steve Burgess, this is hopefully an opportunity maybe to see if he can mount a challenge in the second half of the race. Now, he's going to have to stop for 5 seconds longer than the car that was leading the race overall, that Team ABBA Racing Mercedes. 75 seconds as Ian Logie gives way to Richard Neary. 80 seconds for Steve Burgess. But he should gain time over the Beechdean Aston Martin of Darren Turner giving way to Andrew Howard. They were there in third place, weren't they? But they're going to have to stop for an extra 25 seconds compared to Steve Burgess. So gives him a buffer, in theory, between the tail end of his car and the car that potentially is going to be hunting him down in the hands of Darren Turner for part 2 of the race. So there is, not sure whether he's team manager or reserve team manager, Sam Neary for ABBA Racing. He wasn't present at Alton Park. He said he got more important things to do. He was racing in the Spa 24 Hour, joking aside. So he's back on team manager duties for this weekend. Also being pushed back is Tom Rawlings now, who has jumped on board Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghini. So Richard Neary had been feeling a little bit under the weather, had a bit of a back issue, Richard Neary, and was suggesting that he was going to see how the race earlier on today went, and if he felt well enough after it, then he would continue to race for the weekend. Well, he is behind the wheel of the car now, because we saw reserve driver Sam Neary push the car out. Into the pit lane comes Warren Gilbert. One little small mistake from him, as ever, a charging drive from Warren Gilbert. One little small mistake, just cost him a couple of places. He's out of the car now. Fraser Fenwick about to jump on board. Darren Turner is on board the number 97 Beechdean Ice Cream backed car. And of course, all of those cars that run in Group GTH and of course the Jolt Racing Group GTA McLaren can't pit as yet, but now the clock has ticked to 21 minutes to go. They could now come into the pit lane should they wish. So the pit window is closed for the first batch of cars, which means the pit window opens for the second batch of cars. As long as you enter the pit lane before the window closes, you can still continue. So that's what's going on here with Warren Gilbert giving way to Fraser Fenwick. They were in the pit lane before their window closed, so they can conduct their pit stops. And we might see possibly some of the Group GTH cars come in at the end of this lap, possibly. Now Darren Turner returning to GT Cup. And this Aston Martin will come alive ever more. Fantastic soundtrack the Aston Martin makes. It looks superb in its correct colours, if you ask me. The metallic green with the little light lipstick that it's got on. The yellow surround to the grille on that car, and that infamous shape of the Aston Martin grille as well. Looks ever bigger, doesn't it, on the current version of the Aston. Almost like a basking shark. Looks so wide, the grille. It takes in all of that air, both for the oil cooler, the air cooler, for the engine as well. And we'll wait and see as to exactly what that can do. And also run you down through the order, because the order is slightly shuffled at the moment, because of course some cars pitted on one lap, others pitted on the other. It shows Steve Burgess at the top of my timing screen at the moment, but he will not be in the lead of the race by the time they come over the start-finish line. It will be Ian Loggy that will be leading the race, and here he comes shortly into shot. Through goes Darren Turner. Who's leading Group GTH before they pit? Well, leading Group GTH is Sam Nesser still at this stage, at the wheel of the number 10 Forseti Aston Martin from Matthew Higgins. And then 86 Leona Theobald would be next up at the wheel of the SVG Motorsport Ginetta. Those are the top three in Group GTH, for which we're starting to see those come into the pits now as well. So from the lead of Group GTH, Sam Nesser comes in at the wheel of the number 10 car. Teammate Matthew Higgins follows instantly as well into the pit lane, because their pit window is now open. Team Parker Racing's Doc Bush, the former motorcycle racer, the Antipodean, heads down towards the bottom section of the hangar straight. Out of the number 10 car jumps Sam Nesser. Into the number 10 car goes Will Autumn. Out of the number 9 comes Matthew Higgins. In goes Mikey Porter. And then in the background of the shot, Rupert Williams will be out of the Jolt Racing McLaren 570S GT4. And in will jump John Ingram. That's the car that returns to the championship, having been absent because of Rupert Williams tying the knot over in Vegas. So over the start-finish line goes Ian Loggy. Now, that car is showing as being in 8th position at the moment, which I do query. And I also query it because it didn't show that the car was in the pit lane at one point, despite the fact that it was. So I do think the transponder has failed on that car potentially, and that our timekeepers will pick up on that fact and slot it back in, because it's showing as being 1 minute and 32 seconds behind the race leader at the moment. And according to the information I was given, it would have only stopped for 75 seconds, so it would have stopped broadly similar to everybody else. So Steve Burgess is showing as being our race leader. But Richard Neary, I think I said Ian Loggy, but Ian Loggy's vacated the car. Richard Neary, having now taken over the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, is showing down in 8th position. Now, unless it was a very, very slow pit stop for them, but I'm just going to have a quick look at some other information that's available to me. And the number 6 car, yeah, it doesn't show a pit in and a pit out time, so I have no idea whether it was short on pit stops. But potentially there might be another couple of cars that are short on pit stops. We'll have to wait and see. So as the race continues, we can see that Darren Turner is doing a cracking job at the wheel of the Beechstein Aston Martin. Let's go down and chat to his co-driver, Andrew Howard.
So Andrew Howard, you've just been out in the Aston Martin. Beautiful car. How has it been for you so far?
It's really good. We've missed a few rounds and had a bit of issues, so it's nice to be back racing the car. It's the most important thing. And we're trying to stay in the GT3 class. For us, you know, we want to keep the car true to how we race it. Obviously, I didn't realise there was such a gap to the GTO, which is cool. And maybe that's something we need to look at in the future. But in terms of the GT3, no, feeling really good.
And of course, we've got Darren Turner in the car, vastly experienced. How has he been to work with so far this weekend?
Darren's fabulous. So I've raced with him loads. I really, really like racing with Darren, but he's also been our coach in British GT. So Jess and I have been using him. So I mean, it's a very natural progression. And you know, I was lucky enough to have Johnny in previous seasons and race with Darren at, you know, quite high levels. So it's brilliant. And do you know what? It's great to see him out in a car that replicates the car that he won Le Mans in as well. You know, and he's quick, so it's brilliant.
Yeah, we were saying it's a homage, isn't it, the livery that you've got on that car. How much of that, the past on that Aston Martin, has
has come through in the current Aston Martin? I think they're totally different cars. The generation of cars I started in, had no ABS and were animals who were fabulous, just great fun. Whereas the modern car now is so sophisticated. So I think the homage stops at the colour, but for us, having raced Astons for a long time, it was something I wanted to do. For me, the golden era is the DBR9 and DBRS9 V12s. So it's just fabulous. We just need the noise now.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you, best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, always good to catch up with Andrew Howard, and always good to see the Beechstein car out. Apologies for a few little sound issues there. We'll work on that for hopefully any further interviews we'll pick up in the pit lane. So Darren Turner, as ever, doing a cracking job out there. I can see that still showing now in 4th place, right, okay, is Richard Neary's car, and that is at the moment showing still not as having completed 16 laps, which Steve Burgess and Darren Turner have done. So if there is a glitch with the Mercedes, it's not been corrected just as yet. If they lost time in the pit lane, I can't see where they'd have lost it based on what I saw from the camera shots that you were looking at, and also I can't double check the amount of time that the car was in the pit lane because its transponder would appear not to be working. So our timekeepers will have a look at that, and if there is an issue they will resurrect it. So here comes the car of Richard Neary, showing us in 4th position at the moment, but 1 minute and 25 seconds off the lead of the race, and that's where I got myself scratching my head at the moment, because you really do with a long shot that almost shows where that car is relative to Steve Burgess, the race leader, because the transponder isn't working. It means that the tracking system that our timekeepers also use that track the cars around the circuit also I don't think will be working. So let's have a quick look. Steve Burgess is the number 99 car. Yeah, he's just coming over the start-finish line now, and up at Stowe is Richard Neary. So I just cannot see how they'd have lost that much time in what is usually a very well-oiled team, Team ABBA Racing, unless there was maybe an issue with the seatbelt or something that we didn't see that just delayed that Mercedes far longer than it should have been in the pit lane area. So Steve Burgess still trying to thread his way through traffic. That will be Tom Rawlings that he's coming up towards, the similarly liveried cars, but it's the Tim Gray Motorsport Radical that is about to be lapped by Steve Burgess, who, as we say, is showing as our race leader at the moment. And for Steve, again, a good run in this one. It'd be exactly the medicine that he wants after a puncture when he was lying 2nd earlier on today. Even by Steve's standards, he said 2024 has been, without question, the most difficult season that he's ever had in the best part of 20 years of racing cars. So an engine blow up for himself and Jensen Lunt, who started at the beginning of the season in the Radical. That put paid to their weekend at Donington Park. They walked away with 0 points across all 4 races. Steve had the big off at Brands Hatch in, was it free practice or was it the first lap of qualifying? I think it was qualifying, had an off, which thankfully Steve walked away from. The car went over the barriers down at Hawthorne Bend, but that was the car done for the weekend. They couldn't get it repaired in time for Snetterton, so they scored no points at Brands Hatch, no points at Snetterton. So at that point, we're 12 races into the season and they've not scored a point. Went to Alton Park. The car was running well in the first race until it non-finished. So we're 13 races in and Steve Burgess still hasn't scored a single point in the championship. And then what did he do in the second of the races at Alton Park? He went and won it. And then this morning had to retire a car again, and is coming back into the pit lane again here, and I think this will be for a drive-through penalty, because I think the car was a little bit too short in its pit stop from what I was looking at. So I think this is going to be a drive-through penalty for Steve Burgess, or if he was short in his pit stop, it might be a stop-go penalty for the period that he was short. Fingers crossed it is not a problem for the Tim Gray Motorsport Radical. It's heading down to its garage, but we don't see whether it goes back out the pit lane, frustratingly. So 11 minutes of the race to go, and it did stop at its pits, or no, it stopped right down at the pit lane with the marshal, so that was a stop-go penalty. It was too short on its pit stop. So I think he was probably not quite aware as to where he needed to serve the penalty. Some circuits you serve it at pit lane entry end, other circuits you serve it at pit lane exit end, but it is all written in the final instructions. So Steve Burgess back out on circuit. And does that now mean that he has relinquished the lead of the race to Darren Turner's Aston Martin? The Richard Neary Mercedes still showing us down in 4th place at the moment. So there's the Aston Martin in the hands of Darren Turner. He's got his hands full at the moment. He's trying to work his way past Ed Peed, who has taken over the Greystone GT McLaren from Andre Borodin. Then we've got David Brabham in the ex-Paul Bailey driven Lamborghini Huracan that's next up. And can Darren Turner do anything? He's very confident on the brakes heading in towards Village and the Loop, and he's going to squeeze up the inside of the Lamborghini and works his way through and past. David Brabham lets the race leading GT3 car go through. So Steve Burgess will lose the lead of the race with that unscheduled pit stop. 9.5 minutes of the race still to go, and it should mean that the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 from Beechdean Motorsport, Andrew Howard and Darren Turner, will, according to our timing screens, pick up the lead of the race. So here it comes over the start-finish line now. That's now 19 laps completed. Just under 9 minutes, or just over 9 minutes of the race to go. Through Copse Corner, using all of the curbs, but no more. Darren Turner. Where does Steve Burgess come back out? That's the next question, really, with that drive-through penalty. It's a long old pit lane here at Silverstone, but he is still in second on the road at the moment, the Radical, albeit now 14 3/4 seconds adrift. There's something flapping, isn't there, underneath as well? Just from that shot as they come out of Copse Corner, just looked as though there was something flapping very slightly underneath the car. Through Maggots and Beckett's, and the man from Nottinghamshire accelerates his way onto the hanger straight this time through. He's comfortably in second place, because you look back to where the car is in third place in the hands of Greg Caton. Well, the GCAT Racing Porsche is a long way adrift. Just have a quick look underneath the car here. Was there anything flapping underneath the car there? Can't see it. No, I don't think there was, actually. Don't think there was. Into the pit lane comes Greg Caton at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche. I think that's another car that was slightly short on its pit stop. So this is going to be potentially another stop-go penalty. Now, yeah, that is showing us having stopped for less than a minimum time. Penalty boxes at the end of the pit lane. And I do wonder whether there might be a further car coming down the pit lane as well to serve a penalty. And that might be the Paddock Motorsport car, potentially, of Michael Arant. So back out, having served what was a very short stop-go penalty, goes Greg Caton. That car was running in 4th place, but I think will still be in 4th place. Team ABBA Racing Mercedes in the hands of Richard Neary, now up into 3rd place as a result of that stop-go penalty for the Porsche. 103 seconds adrift of the race-leading Aston Martin. And as I say, I just can't see. I don't know where it lost the time. We didn't see all of the pit stop, so it must have been in the pit lane for a longer period of time before he saw it, because in theory it should have stopped for 20 seconds shorter than the Aston Martin and was leading it by about, 10 seconds, 15 seconds before the pit stops. So it must have lost a load of time in the pit somewhere. Either that, or I say its transponder stopped working for 1 lap and it's not quite been corrected as yet. I really don't know. I genuinely don't know. All we can go off is what the official timing is showing us at the moment, which is showing us that this number 6 car is running in 3rd place, and that Darren Turner has completed 20 laps in the lead of the race. The Radical of Steve Burgess has completed 20 laps, and Richard Neary is about to complete 20 laps. So that's the order of the top 3 at the moment. We've still got 6 minutes to go, so let's go down into the pit lane, and I think we can catch up with one of the drivers for Fossetti Motorsport from the number 10 Aston Martin.
So Sam, welcome to GT Cup. How has it been so far for you?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I mean, my first time ever in the car was literally on Thursday, and I kind of chucked myself in the deep end, and I really had to kind of just get my head down and adapt to the car as quick as possible, and I guess it's not been too bad.
It's gone very well. How has the car been for you to drive and get used to?
I mean, compared to what I'm currently racing in the Clio, it's a lot heavier and obviously a lot more powerful. So I just had to be very mindful about adapting to the different driving style, coming also with a rear-wheel drive car. But after many sessions in the car and kind of many reviews of the data, just worked on it. It's not been too bad to adapt to it.
And it's been an enjoyable battle all day between you and your Facetti teammates. How has it been battling with your teammate?
Yeah, it's luckily it's not been too chaotic. I mean, I'm mindful that the cars are quite expensive. So obviously we can't be properly in each other's doors, but yeah, it's been nice, clean, hard racing.
Thank you. Of course, Will's in the car now. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So that's Will Orton then that's taken over the car from Sam Nesser. Continuing to lead Group GTH at the moment is Will Orton. So this is the car that has just been vacated by the man we've just heard from, Sam Nesser. Will Orton now on board, lying 10th overall, but leads Group GTH, which is good points for the second of the two Forsetti cars. And it is the first time we've seen both of these drivers out in GT Cup. Certainly this year. I think it's the debut for both of them in the GT Cup Championship. And a Group GTH win would be a very good, not start to the weekend, because we had the sprint race earlier on today where they finished second in their group when Sam Nesser drove solo. But a win for the pairing in the first of the pit stop races would be very, very good news indeed. They've got another lap down to the Richard Neary and Ian Loggy car, which is showing as being still in third place in the race, 106 seconds adrift of the race leader, 45 seconds adrift of Steve Burgess, who, remember, he also served a drive-through penalty. So just goes to show either how much time they lost in the pit lane, or the fact that there's still, for me, a question mark over how did it lose all that time. You know, the transponder isn't working on the car because it didn't show a lap time for it. It didn't even show that it was in the pits either. So still scratching my head a bit on that one. Bill Cayley, of course, has now taken over the Trofeo Racing number 80 car in the hands, that was in the hands of father earlier on. They're still running third in Group GTC at the moment, but look at his mirrors, who's there? Chris Murphy, who also runs in Group GTC for points accumulation purposes at the wheel of the M3 GTR. So Bill Cayley needs to get the hurry up a little bit here. Chris Murphy last time through was a little bit slower than the Porsche, so 0.6 of a second further out was the gap between the pair of them. And now might we have also Steve Burgess about to come under attack from Ed Peed? Yes, we do, but if they do shuffle order, that is only for Ed Peed to unlap himself. The Radical is still there. Yeah, just made some inquiries with regards to, did the Mercedes lose time in the pits? And at the moment the early indications are that it is problems by the look of things, and that's a rear wing failure for Fraser Fenwick. So that car is surely going to have to come into the pit lane. That's a danger because the rear wing has snapped, and the faster he goes, the more load will be placed upon it. But also, it is going to be very ill handling, isn't it, for Fraser Fenwick? And that's the car that leads Group GTC at the moment. That would put the sister car of Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings into the lead of Group GTC. Back to the Team ABBA Mercedes and it losing time. Yeah, there is a question mark over, is there a transponder issue with that car? I've just made an official inquiry, and I'm not the only one that's sort of scratching my head as to how it's lost that time, and is it actually running third on the road, or is it leading the race? So can only go based on what the official timing screen is saying so far. And as we say, we didn't get to see all of the pit stop for the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes, only part of it, so no idea when it came into the pits and how long it took before it went out. But I'm not the only one that's sort of questioning, is that car in third place, or is it actually leading the race overall? For the moment, timing screens are showing Darren Turner in the Beech Dean Aston Martin is the race leader, and the clock is only now 60 seconds away from going out. So over the start finish line to start the final lap of the race goes Beech Dean Motorsport. Andrew Howard having done all of the hard work in the early stages, Darren Turner taking over. They've overcome at the moment what looks like a 105 second pit stop relative to others. I personally think it's going to be a car that will ultimately finish in third position by the time we've sorted out any timing gremlins, but for the moment they are on their last lap of the race. 30 seconds to go as up towards Stoke Corner on the final lap goes Darren Turner. Fastest lap of the race is still with the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes when it was in the hands of Ian Loggy, 1 minute 59.259. And it still hasn't really eased its pace, that car. It's still going quickly on this lap as well. Absolute best through the first sector for Richard Neary. He's trying to see whether he can hustle anything further out of it. Steve Burgess at the wheel of the Radical is safely in second place currently. Up towards Stoke Corner he goes. But for Darren Turner, clips the curb beautifully at Abbey, round through Farm, onto the brakes at Village, up towards the loop. And then there's very little further work for him to do, because all he needs to do is just make sure he is nice and neatly out of the loop. He'll take entry in these cars pretty much flat at the wheel of the GT3 car, which he heads through now, and then all he's got to do is the Wellington Straight, Brooklands and Luffield, and then the fairly trouble-free flat-out Kincott, Woodcut, and then the checkered flag should be shown to the Aston Martin this time through. So up towards Brooklands, then towards the sweeping right-hander at Luffield, and then on towards Woodcut Corner. Beechstein have returned to the GT Cup Championship, and once the transponder data has been looked into, we'll wait and see. They claim the checkered flag. Hopefully that will also mean they claim the win as well. So brilliant stuff from Andrew Howard and Darren Turner. Steve Burgess at the wheel of the Tim Gray Motorsport Radical, just coming up towards Luffield as well on the final lap, and problems for him with that puncture in race number 1, and he is accumulating more championship points again now in race number 2. Hopefully he'll have a trouble-free day tomorrow here with the pit stop race in the morning and the further sprint race to come in the afternoon. Group GTA is won again once more by Rupert Williams and John Ingram. Their car has just come over the start-finish line now, so Jolt Racing with another win in Group GTA. And then to complete the podium, Richard Neary and Ian Loggy's Team ABBA Mercedes. Say transponder stopped working on the car for a period of time, and I think that is probably going to be looked into as to did they lose a lap or did they not lose a lap all of that time in the pit lane. They will come through on the road. The unofficial results in third position, 62 seconds off the race leader, 33 seconds adrift of the next car just up the road, but we will no doubt be able to confirm the full results, not to you now during the live stream. That will be confirmed later on. All we can ever give you is the provisional results. And it does look as though the Cayleys are going to get their wish and keep the car clean, improve the times, and finish on the podium. So James Cayley, who started, Bill Cayley brings the car home. They will finish 9th overall, and that will put them 3rd in Group GTC. That was all they were after, was a podium. 4th in Group GTC was Chris Murphy, who didn't quite catch in the end. And then the win in Group GTH has gone the way of Sam Nesser and Will Orton, who for Setti Motorsport finish in 11th place overall, but they're the first of the Group GTH GT4 compliant cars home over the start-finish line. There's still a few more cars to take the checkered flag as yet. Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter come through to finish at 12th overall and 2nd in Group GTH. And Leona Theobald and Owen Hizzy through in the Ginetta to finish 13th overall and 3rd in Group GTH. And then it's just Doc Bush and then Tom Holland to come through. Those are the final 2 cars to take the checkered flag here at Silverstone in our pit stop race. So looks as though for the moment, unofficially, it's Andrew Howard and Darren Turner that take the win. And if that's the case, they will be absolutely delighted with that one. So let's confirm then the provisional results for you at this stage. It looks as though the win provisionally is going the way of Andrew Howard and Darren Turner, with Steve Burgess in 2nd place. 3rd place will go the way of Richard Neary and Ian Loggy, and in 4th place it's Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton. The winning Group GTC goes the way of Charlotte Gilbert and Tom Rawlings, with Paul Bailey and David Brabham coming home in 6th place, and Warren Gilbert and Fraser Fennick. Despite that rear wing collapse, he limps the car home to finish in 7th place. Andre Borodin and Ed Peed, good performance from them from the back of the grid, come through and finish in 8th place. And 9th place, it's the first Group GTC podium in GT Cup for James and Bill Cayley, the father and son. Chris Murphy completes the top 10. In 11th place, it is going to be Sam Nessa and Will Orton. They are first home in Group GTH, ahead of their sister car from Fossetti Motorsport, Matthew Higgins and Mikey Porter, who are 12th. And completing the Group GTH podium will be the car that finished in 13th, Leona Theobald and Owen Hizzy. Doc Bush was there in 14th place. Michael Arant and Tom Holland finished in 15th place. And then a couple of laps adrift of everybody else was Rupert Williams and John Ingram at the wheel of the Jolt Racing McLaren 570S. So all of the cars that started finished. There were a few non-starters in that one, but hopefully they'll be back out tomorrow. So the cars are making their way down the pit lane. That is our action from Silverstone done and dusted for today. But we can bring you all of the action tomorrow here from Silverstone with our first race of the day. Will be the pit stop race. That'll be taking place just before 1:30, around about 1:25 tomorrow, and then we'll bring you the sprint race at around about 5:25. So thanks for joining us for day one here at Silverstone. Why not tune in tomorrow? Goodbye.